Welcome to AI Live at UT Austin. It has been a terrific year of AI. Welcome to the panel on responsible AI and innovation. And let me introduce myself. I'm Luis Sentis. I'm director, I'm the chair of Good Systems, which explore precisely questions at the intersections of ethics, responsible AI, and innovation. I am also a professor in the Department of Aerospace Engineering, and I run a laboratory that we build the humanoid robots that is now a little bit fashionable. But most importantly, we have a wonderful selection of panelists. So I'm going to do the intros for you. I'll start with Chelsea McCullough. She's a PhD in the PhD student in the School of Information and an NSF traineeship fellow in ethics of AI, where she studies urban co-creation and socio-technical systems. She has had an impactful career in the private sector, which includes founding Digi.City, a forum for social impact and smarter cities, and serving as editor at large for Smart Cities Connect. Her work focuses on smart hand tools and ethical AI for the skilled trade community. So welcome.
Thank you.
And she just passed her qualifying exam.
Thanks. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Second, we have Daniel Culotta. He's Austin's Chief Innovation Officer, and he leads an equitable, human-centered innovation team tackling challenges like homelessness, displacement, and emerging technologies through research, design, partnerships, enhancing our city's innovation culture for all Austinites. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks.
We have a colleague and friend, Dr. Junfeng Jiao. He's an associate professor at UT's Austin Community and Regional Planning Program. He also directs a bunch of things, the Urban Information Lab, the Texas Smart Cities, UT Ethical AI Program. He's co-founder of our Good Systems Grand Challenge, and he researches smart cities, urban informatics, and ethics and generative AI. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Dr. Matt Lease. Sorry about the joke. I couldn't stop me. He's a professor in the School of Information and Good Systems executive team member. He investigates AI and human-computer interaction in areas such as crowdsourcing, information retrieval, and natural language processing. He co-directs this new center that he just was talking about, the new NSF AI Institute for Cosmic Origins. This sounds fascinating, called Cosmic AI, and he co-leads Good Systems, Responsible AI for Information Integrity Core Project. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. And normally I get to tell the dad jokes since I'm a new dad, but I'll let you have that one today.
Congrats for being a new dad as well. All right, so we have here at Good Systems an ambitious interdisciplinary initiative where we focus on questions on ethical and responsible AI. We have 140 researchers, professors, research scientists, and affiliates as well, covering over 30 disciplines. And that's why Good Systems cannot be just focused on one single discipline. We focus on areas from the technology to the social questions, to the policy questions, to the information questions, and so on and so forth. We work with industry, nonprofits, governments, and we evaluate what we call human-centered, value-driven AI systems. Our panel is on responsible AI innovation, as we mentioned before. And one of the areas we're going to be covering is this dichotomy, or this fine balance between fostering innovation, how fast we go on development, deployment of AI, but at the same time, how do we ensure highest levels of ethics, and how do we deploy AI in responsible ways? The areas that we're interested in are many, because we may have impacts on AI on equity, transparency, urban planning, overall our quality of life. Another question that will arise here today is what is the role of our university, I guess the city of Austin as well, in ensuring, promoting AI safety. So let's get started with several quick questions. So the first one is for the whole panel on this dichotomy that we just talked about between AI and innovation. How can we fulfill those goals? I'm going to start with Matt, Chelsea, Daniel, and Junfeng, such that we fulfill both goals. We rapidly innovate, but at the same time, we ensure that AI benefits our societies. Both things at the same time. Matt, please go first.
Sure. So I think we want to be very careful about when we roll out new technologies, that we've been thoughtful a bit about what might happen. We want to anticipate things in advance. So you don't want to send the plane off to carry passengers and then think, maybe we should have tested if it will stay up afterwards. The challenge is we're in this sort of very new evolving space of artificial intelligence where we are learning ourselves a lot about what it means to be responsible. So I think that's what we're sort of trying to do in initiatives like this, is sort of identify sort of what sort of the landscape of responsible AI technology, what are best practices in terms of the design, development, evaluation of those, and then how can we do knowledge transfer? So how can we pass this on to the students we educate here at the university? How can we pass it on to our policy leaders? So for instance, here is, we're going to have the biannual meeting of the Texas State Legislature. I think we'll see a lot of AI policy bills. So we've been interacting with them sort of in that space as well. And then how can we help work with our industry partners to help them also think about the latest and greatest of what we can do here? Now, again, it's very much an evolving space. We don't have a lot of the right answers, and we just need to be transparent and open with that with everyone. We also don't have a lot of regulatory guidance right now. And so we have to sort of make the best decisions we have within that landscape and just be prepared and be agile to adapt as it evolves.
Yeah, just building on your thoughts, Matt, thank you. Even the concept, the term innovation, that's a loaded concept. It assumes that there is a solution to a problem. It incentivizes a shiny, fast solution. And we've seen that sometimes the solutions are being decided by a very small group of people. And even the problem framing is decided by a very small group of people. So I think it's our responsibility, as we're looking at this intersection of technology and society, to realize that the incentives to design and deploy technology are not always aligned with the big, messy challenges of society, which are complex, they are systemic, and we need to make sure that folks who are being affected by technology are involved in not only designing and thinking about how technologies are curated and created, but in even the problem sets that we're seeking to address. There's lots of examples that we can give that I think we'll get into later, but I think this is kind of our big challenge, is really questioning, is technology the answer? And should we back up a bit and start asking, what problems do we experience? Who is defining how we experience those problems? And then start to look at different solutions.
Thanks, Daniel. You're next.
Yeah. I get to work in a very large organization and look, across the organization that does, very, very intricate internal things all the way to very broad, societal level things. So we have a huge amount of potential applications, a huge amount of potential innovation, and a huge amount of potential risk and consequence, across our board, which is a really interesting place to sit. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the folks in our organization have training and awareness and literacy and knowledge for these types of tools, and then can use those tools as they think about how they're doing their jobs currently. So kind of thinking about the adjacent possible. Based on what you do now, what could you do next or better? And by framing those as tools that can maybe speed things up or address pain points that folks know they have now in their jobs or in their processes, we get to explore internally and move pretty quickly to make improvements, so foster that innovation, but also in a way that people have that awareness of how they should use these tools as tools, and us able to kind of watch the outputs and results and develop that muscle before we go more broadly into creating, whole new systems that might interface with the public, directly. So we're really creating that knowledge and muscle ourselves first.
Yeah, we'll get back to this question of what the tools would be. You don't have to answer it, but we'll get back in a second. But let's have Junfeng's point of view.
Thank you. Let me tell you a story. This summer, I lead a group of students went to Japan, and we went to one university called Hokkaido University. The campus is beautiful, but one thing struck me very strongly. The founder actually is American. The motto he gave to that university is, boys, be ambitious. That, I think, is a motto when they built that university in a very north part frontier of Japan called Hokkaido. We're in a frontier of human beings, AI technology. So boys, be ambitious. Also, I want to add a second sentence from Google founders. Don't do evil. So I think combine these two sentences, you will be okay. Because you will know whether you build a useful tool or evil tool or good tool. So that's my two sentences.
Well, thank you, Junfeng. So let's kind of dig in a little bit more into this question on, as Chelsea was mentioning, what examples you are seeing that are being successful on effective decision making. It really weights these two questions of the risk and benefits of AI development, AI deployment, in all these areas that you work in, right? You work on areas like urban design, city governance, AI information, smart tools, and so on and so forth. So let's start with Junfeng and Chelsea, Matt and Daniel, of just one example where you've seen a good use balancing benefits and risks.
Well, I'm, as you can see from my first answer, I'm very pro innovation. So I want to be very straightforward. I see the next major thing going to benefit a lot of us, going to be robotaxi. I know people who cannot drive mentally or physically. People who cannot afford to drive because financial reason. I see the AI application in transportation within cities is a major game changer. So I'm a big believer in that part.
Okay.
I'm most excited about the projects that don't generate really big headlines. I appreciate, Daniel, your role of the complexity of having to, represent every single resident in the city, address all of their needs, and understand that cities are systems of systems of systems, and that complexity is experienced differently almost by every single resident. So the programs and projects that I'm excited about are really big and boring. They're doing, taking images of aging infrastructure, whether that's city streets or pipes underground that we can't see, and the analysis of that data to support folks at the city in their different roles to make better decisions. So it's not technology that is leading that question. It is humans who are leading those challenges, leading those questions, and then using the analyzed data in order to make faster decisions. Another really cool use that I've seen, I'm not sure if the city of Austin is doing this, but other cities definitely are, is the idea of taking, decades of public comment and analyzing that public comment. These are public hearings, city council meetings, lots of, thousands and thousands of words, and understanding what is important to residents who take the time and the initiative to have their voice heard. And I think that that's a really important first step to go to the next step which is making sure that people who can't make it down to City Hall or have, their own agency and power to have their voice heard, that we can go to the next step and hopefully engage them more carefully. So I'd like to celebrate folks who are part of a group called GovAI. Again, this is not going to be in the front page of a newspaper. It is long, slow, often very boring work. It is people coming together, getting on Zoom calls, sharing best practices, developing policies. It is hours and hours and hours of community building. So I think, the headlines get the big autonomous vehicles and flashy AI, but I think the greatest hope is when we can use AI just to analyze data so we can make better decisions and create more transparency.
Yeah, I like this, like putting communities at first, and then the technology kind of follows if it needs to follow. Matt?
I think I'm most excited, it'll be unsurprising for many of you, I think about Copilot's generative AI technologies in general for a variety of reasons. One of them is, I think, about democratizing access to AI. So traditionally, if you wanted to do AI, have an AI solve a problem of need to you or your community, you needed to have these few great wizards who had the right training to sort of come up with this stuff to make it for you. And these AI systems we built were very brittle. They worked on very narrow problems, but they weren't very adaptable. Now we have these tools that you can just say in your natural language what you want it to do, and it does remarkably well across all kinds of tasks. And so through an API, you don't have to have the compute where you are right now. You can access this tool, and it seems like so much is really limited by our creativity, our imagination right now, in what we do with these tools. I don't think we have it all right. We have lots of problems with them right now in terms of not producing reliable outputs, producing offensive outputs, and we're in the midst of a real great experiment to try to figure out, how we can take advantage of that ability. But I want to make a quick point is that I think we all know of ChatGPT and OpenAI. They didn't get there first, actually. Google got there first, but chose not to release it. Google looked at this internally and said, we have this AI technology, but it's not reliable. We can't put it out there or it's going to sort of soil our name. And OpenAI, in their partnership with Microsoft, came up with this metaphor of the co-pilot. We're not going to let it fly the plane. We don't trust it, but it'll be there and it'll make suggestions. We'll have a human in the loop. A human AI team will work together with it. Position, contextualize the AI technology as assistive, not necessarily reliable, and put it out there in that context and see what people can do with it. And we've seen all kinds of creativity happen and continuing to emerge with that kind of context. So I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Thanks, Matt. Daniel?
Yeah, that's great. Really to add on to a lot of what you have all said, we've got lots of really interesting use cases that are developing, questions we're researching, both on a technical level to all the way up to policy level at the city. But the places we've really seen this come together that I'm excited about is where we have these big and very dynamic data sets that are influenced in real time, that we would have a huge lag, or we would have to make very educated guesses on what to do and then react. And we can feed those insights and data to the people making those decisions so much more quickly now, and it's just supercharged those processes. So one example that we've seen that's been in the news is wildfire detection and smoke forecasting. So we have cameras on cell towers that were there anyway that are kind of watching these wildland areas all over the city. And they can keep eyes on and detect if there's what looks like evidence of a fire and smoke, and then based on weather conditions and lots of other data feeds, start to make some guesses on where that fire and smoke pattern may progress. And that not only helps us deploy resources and make decisions around how we're going to deploy those resources, but also can give early warnings to residents who may be affected by smoke or air quality and stuff like that. And that is compressed into minutes and seconds what would have probably taken us hours or having to quickly make guesses before, but giving us much more fidelity there. So those types of processes and decisions.
I think that's a wonderful example of the potential benefits, but also brings the potential risks, false alarms, evacuations at the scale, or the lack of evacuations at the scale when needed. This is not a question for you, but Junfeng, you're involved also on this fire propagation. So
yeah,
it's really fascinating. I think it brings us to the next question. I'm reading a book. It's called Snake Oil. It's interesting. It talks about the AI. It talks about the AI negatives, which is not what I'm focusing on, but it's good to know where it goes. And in areas that affects all of our lives, from health decisions to decisions on our pension systems to decisions on loans and banking, financial spending, and so on. For instance, one of the examples that it gives is that several hospitals using AI for dispatching patients were making huge mistakes for pneumonia in particular. Pneumonia can be really dangerous in some populations. And what the AI ended up doing is dispatching people with asthma first and not keeping them in the hospital for longer, whereas it should be the opposite. And the reason is because when somebody has asthma and comes to a hospital, they are actually treated very specially. So they end up having less potentially dangerous outcomes than other populations. So the data show that asthma people are less risky. So they were dispatching them before. That was a huge bias mistake. So I would like to direct this question to Matt and Chelsea. Matt first on is there a silver bullet to handle biases? Matt.
Yes, Chelsea.
Thanks a lot. Are you kidding?
I'll start while you think something else. Yeah. So no. Believe it or not, yeah, no. We're very concerned about having systems that are fair. We try to think about justice and not, creating more injustice in the world. One of the problems we always have is indeed bias. And there's sort of a simple story for thinking about how this happens in AI models. So not a big surprise, the world's a biased place. The way we often make AI models work is we give them data from the world to train on. So they train and they learn the biases in the world. And how do we test if they're working correctly? We say, here's some data from the world. How well can you reproduce it? So therefore, they reproduce this bias. So we definitely have all this challenge. And so it's almost a different model for how we're training AI systems, because we're not saying, how well can you accurately predict the real world? We're saying, what do we want the world to be like? And how well can you create predictions or suggestions or recommendations like that? Even though we don't know exactly what that world's supposed to be like, not for sure, or we don't necessarily agree on it, and we don't have the data for it. So Dean Vandenboot in the last session was asking a question about synthetic data generation. We might need to do some form of generating the data about what the world we want to be like so that we can train our model on that kind of data and test our model on that kind of data. So it's definitely a challenge. So no silver bullet, but it's something we care a lot about and are working toward.
I agree with you, Matt, in that AI is compared to a lot of material objects. It's been called a tool. It's been called a silver bullet. I really see AI more as a mirror. And the fact that AI is now, for better or for worse, so ubiquitous and it's impacting all of our lives, whether we understand how it's impacting our lives or not. I hope, and this is my positive stance on AI, of which I have a lot of concerns, is that if we are presented with this mirror, then we may have the chance to have some really serious and very meaningful conversations about systemic bias, about systemic inequities, about how all of this is not only affecting our lives, but especially those who do not have the privilege to be on stages, who do not have the privilege to be in universities, And I see a lot of the work that's being done by scholars such as Dr. Ruha Benjamin, Dr. Joy Bulamwini, on our own UT campus, Dr. Angela Davis, who thankfully is on my committee, and I have the chance to learn so much from, Dr. Craig Watkins, who is also a part of Good Systems, social advocates and leaders in Austin, Mimi Stiles with Measure, doing a lot of really intentional, very difficult work around pronouncing systemic inequities and understanding how AI is reflecting those and even accelerating some of those. So perhaps if we have, one big opportunity, it's the chance to really look at AI, its impact, and this kind of shared experience as a chance to elevate the conversation a bit.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. So this question is directed to Daniel and Chelsea again. Junfeng, I'm going to get back to you in a second. Sorry for the gap. But we just saw last week, or a couple of weeks ago, a draft, Texas draft for an AI bill proposal. And in creating, one of the points was creating a sandbox. And that was to reach going back to the question of this dichotomy between innovation, pushing AI forward quickly, but then ensuring, accountability and responsibility and so on. That's one of the proposals of the bill, creating a sandbox. We don't know exactly how it's going to look like, okay? So here are a couple of questions about the sandbox. Who do you think should be creating this sandbox? At the technology level, at the protocol level, at the accessibility level? Options. The city of Austin or states, universities, technology companies, some of the big AI companies. And what do you think is the impact on legal and accountability of these organizations? The city now, the sandbox, startups can deploy, something goes wrong, there's accountability there. Mm-hmm. Please, Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, the concept of a sandbox is interesting. I think it would have to be at, the organizational level or at the level that folks were carrying out, the processes that and receiving or affected by the outcomes that the AI and AI tools are creating. I would hope that a sandbox would be created so that it wasn't actually affecting real life. It was affecting some proxy version of that. We have a really great piloting program at the city through our transportation group for transportation and smart city technologies, where they can actually, companies in the city can come together and try things kind of in physical space, but physical space that's not downtown, right, in the middle of a bunch of stuff, and see how it works. So, if we were creating that sandbox, I hope we could create that proxy or twin, or however we want to say it, to have some of those deep levels of inquiry as we go, and make sure that those effects are isolated and that we can analyze them before we release them to the world.
I think in the working communities, it's even more severe, right? Mm-hmm. It's very sensitive to deploy something that can affect, the day-to-day living. Do you have ideas on these particular communities, how we could create testing before we actually go there?
Yeah, and the Senate bill, the AI Senate bill, is actually really interesting. I think it would be really cool if at Good Systems at that level, and even university-wide and community-wide, we can dissect that bill and debate it a bit. So that's a big challenge, and maybe some homework for everyone. Sorry, Louise. But what I think is interesting about that bill is it actually proposes a lot of consumer protections that I haven't seen in other proposed legislation at the state level or even at the federal level in the US. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see it, actually. The sandbox specifically is interesting because it creates this container for experimentation, innovation, if you will, for entrepreneurial thinking. But it also kind of negates some of the protections in the rest of the bill. So I think the concept of a sandbox is a really good one, in that it invites creativity, innovation. The challenge is you have to make sure who is incentivized to create that sandbox, who is invited to innovate, and what does innovation really mean, and who is incentivized to say, this isn't quite right, when technology is rolling full steam ahead at Mach speed. So it's complicated in a, there's not the silver bullet of the sandbox is the answer. Perhaps it's a framework, but there's a lot of different stakeholders who need to be involved in designing that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'd want to add that the ramp or the gate or whatever you want to call into and out of the sandbox is probably just as important as the sandbox itself, because sometimes I think concepts of sandboxes or pilot projects or whatever are put forward so that you can just externalize whatever you're doing. But we need a way to actually bring in or disqualify the good or bad things that happen in that sandbox and not just have it be its own little tornado or island over here. The value is really making sure that there's an effective way to transfer, and if we don't have that, it's kind of pointless in my opinion.
Yeah, but I in a way, at a personal level, I hope University of Texas plays a very important role. At the same time, the leadership needs to consider what is the potential risks, because the failures in there are hugely impactful for the organizations who are behind it. But somebody has to do it right. This question is for Junfeng and Matt. We talk about risks and benefits in different areas, in particular in your areas and fields. I know Junfeng has a particularly optimistic view of deployment of AI. So I would like to hear from him first, his perspective on ahead of the next couple of years, what kind of great impact and outcomes we're going to see from AI. And Matt, you're going to be on the critical side, maybe a skeptical, maybe, and comment about what is the risk we're going to see in the next couple of years.
Down with AI.
Down with AI, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Luis. I don't want to talk about the doomsday scenario, but I just want to give you some of my estimation of AI application in the next few years. One is individualized or domain subject model, say your accounting or your just individual. You will have your personalized large language model trained by your own data, and you can ask questions and get suggestions. Just like every one of us has an email address. I don't see your email, you don't see my email. So you don't see my large language model, I don't see your large language model. That's called individualized domain-specific model. That's is going to be very popular. Also, I want to just provide an example. When electricity first come out, people just worry about, oh, this is going to kill us immediately. We know that's not true. So again, until we give some try, let's not stop the wheel. The wheel of the car. The second application will be autonomous. Autonomous will ranging from a robo-taxi to robots. My good collaborator Luis and I, and we are all very optimistic about the robot deployment. And basically, many jobs can be not replaced, can be assisted by robots. That's the second area. The third area I want to say is the combination of AI with artist community. So when you do the creative, be movie or even architecture or design, now you just use your mind. Now just imagine you have a twin brother assisting you to do the design work. So how wonderful that is. Okay, I'll stop there. 3 examples. Matt?
Down with AI. I think science fiction, popular media has always been rife of things that scare us about the unknown in the future. And AI is certainly one where we sort of imagine these tools, everything from them, of course, taking over the earth and getting rid of the rest of us. I think when we build any tool or any technology historically, I think a saying we've used since the beginning of Good Systems, borrowed from our friend at University of Washington, is technology is neither good nor evil, but nor is it neutral. I think the tools we build have opportunities for greatness and darkness, depending on sort of how we all employ them, which is why I think we're trying to sort of engage amongst ourselves and with all of you, it's sort of very thoughtful conversations around that. So we were just sort of talking about autonomous systems over there. I have grown up in the time, I think, when I was in, to date myself, maybe middle school to high school. We were having Desert Storm, and we were launching lots of Patriot missiles in that time. And we've gone to an age now where we have a lot more drones and drone strikes. It's much easier to wage warfare when you don't have people coming home in body bags. And of course, we don't want our sons and daughters to be out there on the battlefield dying, but we may also be more adventurous in our foreign engagements when we can do so, and it's just about spending dollars rather than putting lives on the line. So I think we are going to see increasingly trends towards autonomous warfare, and we have a lot of potential regions around the world of interest where that's going to probably be happening sooner than you might be thinking. So I think that's one where we sort of need to be very thoughtful about what rules we want to put in place internationally in terms of any treaties. Or, for instance, people have decided not to clone humans. We have treaties internationally around that. We might have treaties internationally around the roles of autonomous warfare. But I think that's going to be a really tricky one to sort out. Something, much more domestic space we've talked about. So I have the Good Systems Project involved in looking at information integrity. So everything, again, from disinformation, misinformation, conflicting information. And we definitely had lots of fears and some realities around sort of content that was not real when you're looking online, whether it's a video or text. The local advice being given to voters was, talk to your local election official to know kind of what's real. But if you get a phone call from somebody that sounds like your local election official telling you the election is a day later, what do you do about that kind of thing? So I think we have definite big challenges around thinking about information reliability, security, the information environment, and how we safeguard that. Because for free functioning societies like we are, where we make decisions collectively, we can't do that without reliable information we know and we trust. And that's a disadvantage we face versus some of our adversaries internationally who don't have that same problem. So that's why we, in our project in Good Systems, are really trying to look at what are the tools, AI tools, we can put in the hands of information analysts, fact checkers, journalists, anybody out there to help them get a better sense of what's reliable and what isn't out there to make better decisions.
Well, thank you, Matt. So touching onto this point of treaties and going more local, statewide, we have the case of cars, just cars, right? And there's thousands, if not tens of thousands, collectively of rules that cars must obey. Those are laws. I think maybe if you ask most people in the room if we should remove those rules and sort of play the rules as in an ad hoc basis and dispute them and so on, I would say that people would say, like, no, they are fine. Autonomous cars are fulfilling those rules. The Teslas are coming out and so on, right? So that brings us to the question of the AIs that we're deploying. Why not going, that's for Daniel and Chelsea, why not going through a complete set of rules, thousands of rules? AI should not do this, should not do that, should respect the decision of a human first, and so on and so forth. It has worked for cars. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I think, AI could be applied in so many different ways and so many different fields and types of decisions. It might be hard to make highly nuanced rules. I think a lot of those fields already have a lot of rules, and first we need to make sure that our AI tools and programs are working within those boundaries that we've set up. So I think as we are gaining what's purported to be these superpowers in these certain areas, we need to make sure these powers are staying within the institutions and rules that we've already established. And I think it just brings it makes me think of these bigger points of what are the decisions, what are the systems, what are the good systems that we're empowering with these tools, and how do these tools play a part of them. Again, I think we can have general policies, but once these things are established, we don't have a whole lot of rules of how you use Microsoft Excel, in society. And I'm hoping when, we just know that it can power these bigger decisions and these bigger processes that may have their own rules at a larger scale. So I'm hoping that eventually AI is seen like that as a tool within these larger systems that does help, but still has to stay within the boundaries that we've created for them.
I like this analogy with Excel. I think it's a great answer. Chelsea?
Yeah, I think your example, Luis, of autonomous vehicles is a really good one because it speaks to the complexity of the rules and systems that we have in place and how they're having to be rapidly transformed to accommodate technology, AI, innovation, and how it impacts human beings. So autonomous vehicles are deployed in the city of Austin. They're around campus. They're all over the city. And those are private sector machines that are incentivized by revenue and profit. But the city can't regulate, to my knowledge, I might be wrong about this, Daniel, correct me if I am, can't regulate how those autonomous vehicles are testing on public infrastructure, our roadways, our shared infrastructure. So when something goes wrong, because everything goes wrong eventually, there's always issues, such as the pileup on West Campus and everybody was stuck in traffic for hours and hours and it was like this big mashup of autonomous vehicles. That can't be the city's job because there is no regulation on what to do about that. But it's happening on public infrastructure. It's involving police and fire department. It's clogging up sidewalks, which is the public right-of-way. It's potentially impacting human life, hopefully not fatally, hopefully not in injure, but it's delaying people and processes. So who makes the rules and who creates the regulatory barriers to put those things in place when we're experimenting with them in real time? And I think we have to start there before we deploy technology on public streets and then the public sector has to basically pick up the pieces. I think that's where we need to start before, really kind of seeing it in real time.
Yep, I can see people going to AI school for just learning all the rules, how AI impacts the city, right? And you having also police, AI police, you kind of broke the rule, right?
Did you see the YouTube video where the police officer goes up to the autonomous vehicle to give it a ticket because it's parked illegally, and they're like, "There's no one. Who do I give a ticket to?" Yeah. I mean, it's a silly example, but it's an important one.
All right, almost there with the questions before we're going to jump in audience questions. Let's go back to concerns on the positive outlook from Junfeng on labor dynamics, labor replacement. Sorry about that. From Junfeng and Chelsea, I would like to hear how can we make sure that AIs are beneficial to employees, but also I preach often that not everything are either employees that they really have. Maybe they live paycheck to paycheck, and the other side is these magnates and rich people. There's all these things in between. In particular, there are even our student populations. They want to have company startups. They don't really have the cash. They don't have the way to start. So AIs can benefit equally those people. So there are two sectors I'm particularly interested. The workers are affected, and then our student population and other youngsters that couldn't start companies, and AI might allow them. So on the impact on kind of workers, how can we consider AI? What consideration we should have with AI in order to benefit, and the same for you for the entrepreneurs, youngsters. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I have the privilege of being a GRA on the Smart Hand Tools project, which is one of the 6 core research projects for good systems. And as a part of this project, we're working with skilled labor workers and students. In welding, we're working with with union workers, with the AFL-CIO here in Texas, and also with the city of Austin, and skilled workers and the Parks and Recs Department, Fleet and Mobility Services, Austin Water. And so we're learning a lot from them, first asking the question, how do you feel about AI? And when Pew did a survey of 10,000 Americans, people, more than 50% of them said, we're more concerned than we are excited about AI. So we used this kind of framework and asked skilled trade workers, how do you feel about AI? How does this apply to you? Could it be helpful? And if yes, how? So I think it's much longer conversation and one that I'd really like to have with anyone who's interested. But I think the overall idea here is not to make assumptions and to instead go in with an open mind. And as researchers, that's our job, and ask the folks who we are designing for and flip it and design with. So this is designed to be much more of a co-created opportunity. So we're looking at, how can AI support building a safer workplace? How can it augment training? And what we're learning is that skilled trade workers are saying, I'm not worried about AI replacing me. What I do is technical, what I do is difficult, but I would like more information so I can make decisions about my work, not as a surveillance technology from the employer, but as information that I can assess in real time so I can create a safer environment and learn new skills as I want to. So it's about the locus of power, I think, is important.
Follow up for the future, the cell phone is in my view, is a clear world winner on empowering everyone. You go to the poorest demographics and the richest demographics, and they are all using the cell phone. People are doing banking. People are running businesses with a $25 phone in places where otherwise. So AI could potentially become the cell phone that we have to make a case that empowers all the way to the bottom, right? And on the other hand, it serves our entrepreneurs in-house. So please talk about it.
Yeah, I just want to differentiate two things. One is AI going to replace the working force. One is AI going to assist the working force. In the first category, we all know we are in an aging society. Sooner or later, you're going to need some helpers. What if you cannot find human being helpers? In that case, it would be a perfect example for a robot or AI to assisting you. That will come in the very near future. In the second category, where AI or robot are going to replace the worker, and the worker cannot be retrained for a new job. In that case, we have to be very serious and very careful about this process. For example, follow the autonomous robotaxi. We have an immediate example called autonomous truck. The truck driver is a well-paid blue-collar job in this country. But when you replace the truck driver with autonomous truck, how can they find a new job? You may say, okay, they can go to Master of AI or Master of CS school in UT or somewhere. But that's not true. Not everybody can study CS or AI. So you have to find a solution for them as well. So I know time's short. I was going to stop there.
Well, thank you. So I want to skip closing remarks. Not that it's not important what your final thoughts are, but I think we have a wonderful audience that is really numerous here. So we have about 7 minutes, and we're going to take questions for the audience from the audience to the panelists. So, Ardi, go ahead. And there's a microphone over here. And then next person who will raise a hand, you and you, okay? We'll go to the gentleman next.
Hello. There's a lot of concern about people losing their jobs, but do y'all know research, like hands-on research, where people are looking at and interviewing people that don't have a job, right? The people in developing nations that are, living hand to mouth, or the people who are on street corners, right? There's, the idea of studying things, but actually interacting with those populations and saying, what are your needs, and how, looking at the impacts of AI in that space.
Anybody would like to answer?
Everyone's looking at me. I don't know why. So, I think it's a really beautiful question, and I appreciate you asking it. I know that good systems, I believe, it might not be a good systems project. There is some research around studying the effects of homelessness and people in the unhoused population in the city of Austin. I honestly don't know of research outside of that one specific study, but I think it's something relative to AI that we should spend a lot more attention on, and I hear that as a call to action, and I hope other people in the audience are interested in picking up the mantle and doing something along those lines. So thanks.
Daniel, do you want to comment?
I think, yeah, Chelsea, there's been a lot of really good human-centered work done on homelessness in Austin. I know the Innovation Office several years ago had quite a focus on that, where we did well over 150 lived experience interviews and worked directly and deeply with folks that were currently experiencing homelessness on several aspects of how the city works within that system, the services we provide. And I think it brings up this idea for me that we need to be really thoughtful about these broader systems and decisions that we're taking or considering, and being thoughtful about what the real pain points and lacks are and the tools that we use to fulfill them. Those could be AI, but I've said, if we, people are like, oh, what if we made AI forms that could get people to services really fast, right, or figure out what they needed. I'd say if we just get them really fast to services that are really bad or that don't exist in the first place, we're not really solving the problem. So I think we need to make sure to understand the full problem and where the actual pain and intervention points are, and use AI appropriately, but use it appropriately as a piece of the puzzle, not the entire thing.
The gentleman over, please go ahead.
I have a kind of similar questions. First, thank you for the insightful panel. A little bit about me. I work in fairness in AI algorithm, and I'm ethical AI portfolio student. My question is related to when I started to look for a project, there were a lot of challenges to find data set representation. So I work in breast cancer risk prediction, for example, and I barely found one data set that had diversity in mind when the data set was collected. So it's challenging to even do it here in the US and try to think of the society as a whole. And my question is, what are we doing to other populations? I'm Egyptian, North African. Are these populations even considered? Their whole continents, the global south, is not even on our radar. So my question is, how can we do better?
Yeah, nice.
To save time, I'm the director of Ethical AI Portfolio Program. I can answer your question. Let's just start with what you have right now and make something, then step by step move to the other countries. That's my answer.
I guess I would add partly, the West has, let me say it differently. I think some of the most developed nations have been leading a lot of the research, but they aren't necessarily some of the people who always need it the most. So I think there's a combination of us looking more outward and thinking more about the global impact of work and ways that we can do things. I think there's also us about helping develop infrastructure that's more accessible to people in the rest of the world to solve their own problems for them, so that we don't sort of paternalistically need to come in and do that, or we can partner with them and sort of co-design kind of situations like that. So it's a great question on a really thorny problem, but those I think would be sort of the three things I would think about. What can we do, how can we partner, and how can we empower?
So we have two more questions. Are you still asking the question? And then the lady over there.
Thank you so much, first of all. Amazing panel. So my question here is, we have transitioned from standard if-else conditions to RPA, to narrow models, to large language models, and now from AI to probably AGI in next 10 to 15 years. That's kind of a prediction. But are we still able to address the pain point that is going to be biased/unbiased, Or is this something where we still need to do the law enforcement? Or is this something which is beyond, where we think we want it to stay alive as the real AI?
I'll make a quick comment, and then again, my smarter colleagues can jump in. How are we doing on eliminating bias in society? Right? So,
I think we get an F minus.
yeah. So,
F.
F minus, yes.
I think there is lots of energy and interest in thinking about the systems we're building, and with good reasons. They're more powerful, they're more ubiquitous, they're having wider reach. But again, as we've talked about a couple times, these systems are reflections of us, and there isn't a silver bullet to somehow make them perfect in ways that we are not. So I think the challenge, we're having lots of conversations, within the country and beyond, is how we can be a more fair and just society. And as I think Chelsea has said well, that comes into thinking about when we're developing new technologies, how those impact different people in different ways, and making intentional choices about how we proceed. Now, more astute comments?
No, I think it's beautiful. And it's very easy to feel in this age of AI like things are out of our control. It feels like AI is happening all around us and to us, but not with us. But I'd like to challenge that. I mean, for each of us individually and personally, just to acknowledge our own biases and to constantly check in and hold ourselves accountable for that. And then as our circles widen to our closest people in our lives, to our colleagues, to our families, to our communities, constantly question how is bias being represented in all of the systems that we're building, including the technical systems, and hold space for that answer. And I would love, in the age of AI, deployment and design, for that to be the leading question as opposed to, how are we going to win?
Maybe a quick follow-up if I can. So we've been talking about these AI bills that are coming out right now, and of course we have maybe some expertise to comment, but these are public documents, and anybody from the public can comment and be involved in their development, whether it's going to the Texas legislative session. So a week from today, you can go to the Capitol and you can be part of a public session giving feedback on a draft bill right now that's out there on AI. Or in general, following this stuff and talk to your elected officials about this stuff.
And the same thing applies to good systems that we promote, really, any of you from any walks of life, you can come to us and we will do our best to influence in the ways that we can, in the right ways that we believe, the larger organisms that take actual decisions affect our lives. I want to go to the last question of this lady over there.
Hello, can you hear me? So 2 quick things. One is just about the community engagement aspect, how you're talking about like getting input and stakeholders. I think it's so important. I don't want to continue to kind of go over the importance of that, but it's just, you have people who are already disengaged just in real life. So to find a way to bring them into the fold in something that's so kind of disconnected and distant from their reality, how do you, this is the first question, how do you get good sound feedback from people who really may not have a firm understanding of the capabilities of AI? I mean, we don't even have the firm understanding. So to understand how will it help them or not help them or hurt them, if you don't really understand it fully, how do you give good, meaningful input, And then the second part of it's not part of this question, but it's just second, is kind of like to me, the conflict of profit and innovation and the interest, in their people making money and quickly coming up with these solutions that may or may not be fully tested. That's a concern. I work for the city, actually, in procurement. So we see this. There's a lot of solutions that come up that are, they're pitched as, unique solutions. And and there's so much going on so fast, we don't even know what's happening, in other areas. So that concerns me because we're grasping onto solutions that may not be fully vetted and tested in the interest of moving technology forward. I know that I said a lot, but I have a lot on my mind. So those 2 things are my concerns. Thank you.
The AI bill has a provision, and Anyway, you can find it a AI bill proposal of indexes and provisions for widespread training for all professionals and non-professionals, whatever, right? But I think maybe Chelsea, you want to comment on it?
First, I just want to thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your concerns and your voice. A lot of folks may not realize the power of the procurement officer at the city level. They're understanding what technologies are serving the public good and how adjustments need to be made. And in the age of emerging technologies, AI, autonomous vehicles, everything in between, how these systems get deployed is an incredibly important and very complex job, which is often not celebrated, so thank you. In terms of your question around how we elevate the community voice, I wish I had a really easy answer for that. I'm spending years trying to understand how to do that. What I do know is that the answers already lie in our neighborhoods and our communities, and that is the locus of power. The challenge is the disconnect between the perceived place of power and decision making and the true power on the ground and on the edges. So I think our job is, again, to always question how can we decrease that barrier in ways that serve both. I think in the absence, in that gap, is where most of our local, state, national, global challenges, that's where conflict lives. So I wish I had an answer to you, and I'd love to dedicate the rest of my life to figuring it out.
People are hungry, so thank you to Chelsea, Matt, Daniel, and Junfeng. Thank you for being here.